on the sunshine this morning. Good morning. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And Happy Lunar New Year. This is the year of the dragon. So yes, let there be dragons. We are so glad that you're here this morning, whether you're in person or those of you watching us online. This is a community that we hope helps you to find and keep your balance, a congregation that inspires you to lead a life of integrity, service, and joy. Wherever you're from, whoever you are, whether here in person or online, you are most welcome here. I'm Reverend Kathleen Rolenz, pronouns she, her, and I'm serving as your interim senior minister here at Unity Church.
I'm Ari Giles, a member of Unity Church and serving as today's worship associate. This church is a vibrant community, and much of what is happening after today's service and in the weeks ahead can be found in your This Week at Unity. However, Reverend Kathleen and I wanted to highlight some events which you might want to put on your calendar.
So first of all, if you are new to Unity or would like to know more about Unity Church, there is a Finding Yourself at Unity class, which is held upstairs in the Gannett Room. The Gannett Room is on the, Holly side of the church. And it's at 10:15. Reverend Laura Cowton will be talking about congregational care at Unity. Also, after the service, you're welcome to stop by the parish hall. There's coffee, refreshments, usually donuts. And a couple of things. Visit the Racial and Restorative Justice Team table. They are handing out flyers to ask congregations to ask their city council members when the St. Paul Recovery Act Community Reparations Commission will be seated. So this commission was created, but it's not been seated. So we're asking you to put a little pressure on your council persons to seat that commission.
Also, this week, Unity's Act for the Earth team invites you to attend a retreat on climate crisis, held Saturday, February 24th. Stop by their table in the parish hall to learn more.
We are accepting applications for worship associates. You can apply on the website under the Worship Associates tab. So please, if you're considering that, fill out an application soon.
And please make sure to mark your calendars for Unity's annual fundraiser to be held on Saturday, March 2nd. It's coming up, and donations are accepted until February 15th.
So now, take a breath. We enter into a time of worship, beginning with the pealing of our bell.
let it go, they told me, but I just couldn't hear their plea. Let it go, they told me, 'cause I was trying to make the right mistake, right mistake. I was only trying to make the right mistake. You could be the perfect stranger. You could be from Illinois. Come around here courting danger, making all that noise. You know I'll be there. Tell me when the deal goes down. You know I'll be there. 'Cause I was trying to make the right mistake, the right mistake. I was only trying to make the right mistake.
We come together now to worship. Spirit calls to spirit, hand reaches out to hand. Heart joins with heart, voice lifts with songs of praise. Come, let us worship together with the lighting of the chalice. Please join me in the words found in your order of service. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith, the light of truth, and the warmth of love. Come, let us worship together.
Lord,
remain standing as we read from your order of service the responsive reading. Even now, we could be happy. Even now, breathing in. Filling our bodies with right now, from the dirt below us, from our toes to our knees, hips up our spines, shoulders to earlobes, the tip tops of our heads to beyond to the stars. Breathing wide across our stand, into the space that comes still forever, where we belong. Even now, we can be shocked by the thunderclap, the storm, laugh at the abundance of our grief, and our earnest attempt to avoid the inevitable. We are a delight. We could be another blessing with our grief and epic lives, where every day we are giving out of love.
Each time we gather for worship, we set aside a moment to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. So we take a moment to settle ourselves, to pause, to reflect, and to pray. Our human condition includes the truth that on any given Sunday, there may be one among us who is facing cancer, and another is mourning the loss of a beloved. There may be one among us who is struggling with mental health and addiction, and another is trying to embrace the spiritual practice of raising children. Someone among us is worried about making ends meet, and another is concerned about a loved one in prison. There may be one among us who is facing their final days, and we support them in this time of transition that requires curiosity and courage and honesty. We hold in care all of these and more as we pray for the peoples of this courageous congregation, and as together we live into our longing to embody and to help build beloved community. So this day we hold in care Unity member Peter Hagee, who had surgery on Wednesday, February 7th, to repair an abdominal aortic aneurysm. The surgery went well, and we are delighted to report that he is now on the road to recovery. Nicole Vesperman, whose mother has been hospitalized for 7 weeks, has asked for our prayers. Her mother is improving but continues to struggle. So we are holding you, Nicole, in heart and mind, and your mom. And we continue to hold in our hearts Minister Emerita, the Reverend Jan Eller Isaacs, as she continues to live boldly and to love fiercely amidst cancer. We invite you now to speak aloud the names of those who are on your heart and mind this day, whom you would like us to support in our caring sanctuary. Join me now in a moment of meditation, reflection, prayer, as is your practice. Life, source of all that we know as holy, settle in with us in this moment, this hour, because we need some reassurance that we can face the fears that we confront every day. We feel the climate changing around us and wonder, is this the beginning or the end? We see our children and our youth burdened by so much anxiety, and we ask, what can I do to spare them from this needless worry? We watch the news and see displacement and desperation and say, what can I do from the comfort of my home to ease such enormous suffering? For this moment, put all those fears down. Breathe. Know that for every one of the world's weighty woes, there is also wonder. For each bruising, there is also beauty and blessing. Remind us of the wisdom of the ancient psalmist who said, weeping may last the night, but joy comes in the morning. In the stillness of the quiet, if we listen, we can hear the whisper in the heart, giving strength to weakness, courage to fear, hope to despair. We sit together now for a time of shared silence, knowing that it is in silence where we may find renewed strength and courage and hope.
Sometimes it gets so hard to listen, hard for me to use my eyes, and all around the gold is glistening, making sure it keeps me down to size. And I don't want to know about evil, I only want to know about love. I don't want to know a thing about evil, only want to know about love. I'm waiting for the planes to tumble, waiting for the towns to fall. I'm waiting for the cities to crumble. I'm waiting till I see you grow. Yes, it's getting hard to listen, hard for us to use our eyes, 'cause all around that gold is glistening, making sure it keeps us hypnotized. And I don't want to know about evil, I only want to know about love. I don't want to know about evil, I only want to know about love. I don't want to know anything about evil, I only want to know about love. I don't want to know about evil, I only want to know about love.
This morning we have both a reading and a reflection. The first reading is by Christian Wyman from his book Zero at the Bone, 50 Entries Against Despair, followed by worship associate Ari Giles, who will offer a reflection on the theme of choosing. This from Christian Wyman. I prayed for wonders instead of happiness, writes Abraham Heschel, and you gave them to me. I thought of this moment not long ago when one of my twin 4-year-old daughters walked wide-eyed and trembly into my room at midnight. Daddy, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I'm seeing terrible things. I suggested she pray to God. This was a moment of either great grace or brazen hypocrisy, as I'm not a great prayer myself and tend to be either undermined by irony or overwhelmed by my own chaotic consciousness. Nevertheless, I suggested that my little girl get down on her knees and bow her head and ask God to give her good thoughts, like the old family house in Tennessee that we'd gone to just a couple of weeks earlier. Think of the huge green yard and the river with its snapping turtles, the buckets of just picked blueberries, and the fried crispy creams that she loves so much. I told her to hold that image in her head and ask God to preserve it for her. I suggested she let the force of her longing and the fact of God's love coalesce into a form as intact and atomic as matter itself, to attend to memory with the painstaking attentiveness of the poet, the visionary innocence of the child whose unwilled wonder erases any distinction between her days and her dreams. I said all of this underneath my actual words, as it were, and waited while all that 4-year-old insight took it in. "Oh, I don't think so, Daddy." She looked me right at the eyes. "What do you mean, Eliza? Why not?" "Because in Tennessee, I asked God to turn me into a unicorn." And she spread her arms wide in a disconcertingly adult and ironic shrug, and look how that worked out. Here ends the first reading.
When Kathleen and I discussed the theme of choosing, we talked about all the micro decisions that go into it, the choices, both big and small, that lead up to the larger decisions. I thought about how, when faced with too many choices, it can become paralyzing. And what do we do when we're faced with a choice that isn't really a choice? I wanted to talk about finding the humor of life and choosing to live as if you're in a comedy. But my last large decision included putting my dog down. And I've been struggling to find a way to reconcile the joy of life with the pain of death. I honestly was really not sure how to talk about any of this until my best friend, Joanna, gave me a call. I had been crying for 30 minutes, and she started the call off by asking me what my worst travel experience was and telling me that if we bet $100, she could beat it. On her flight from Ohio to San Francisco, her plane got caught in a storm that was so dangerous, and there was so much turbulence over the course of their 2 touchdown attempts that not one, but multiple people threw up. Joanna, who was sitting next to a couple clinging to each other while fending off falling luggage that was coming out of the overhead compartments, told me that after the 2 unsuccessful attempts, they didn't end up landing in San Francisco at all, but was routed first to LA, then Ontario, California. The airline then put her up in a place that was so sketchy that her taxi driver questioned whether it was even a hotel at all. And the lock on her door was broken, so she needed to put a chair underneath the door handle. And to make matters worse, she had thrown out her back, and when she finally landed 36 hours later in San Francisco, it was somehow quicker to take a trolley to a train to a shuttle to just get to work instead of going home. In her telling, we laughed the whole hour because there was not one thing that went right. And in that hour, the pain that I was feeling from all of the tiny microscopic choices that led up to my dog's death, all of that started to be a little easier. It helped me hearing how she could turn something that was so terrible into something joyful, at least for me, that my own grief was lessened. Choosing to find the joy in living means always trying to find delight. Sometimes you can't wait for joy. You need to practice it and hold on to it and grab it when it appears. I choose to see my world and my existence in it as a divine comedy, even if I'm not always laughing. And in other words, I choose to believe that no one's really laughing at God. We're all laughing with him.
Well, it just goes to show you, it's always something. If it's not one thing, it's another, right? That was the great philosophical insight from the late great comedian Gilda Radner from her skit on Saturday Night Live, maybe as far back as the 70s. Now, I know that there are some of you in this room who maybe never watched that show, or perhaps weren't even born when that phrase, "it's always something," made its way into our popular culture. But lately, I've been in conversation with our facilities manager, Robert Baker, and I asked him this past month, "So how's the building holding up?" And he laughed and he said, "Well, it's always something." To which I chimed in, "If it's not one thing, it's another." Hence the title for the sermon. And isn't it like what life feels like most of the time? Like that carnival game of whack-a-mole. We just whack down one problem and another pops up, and the speed at which we're required to whack increases until we just don't want to whack anymore. And that's when this month's theme enters that game. This month's theme is choosing, and it's a rich topic as we consider such heady theological questions as free will, determinism, karma, and freedom of choice. So I see this as actually a two-part sermon today, and then on February 25th, the sermon is called Between a Rock and a Hard Place, and that will look at more the political ramifications of choice. But today we're going to do a deeper dive into the promises, possibilities, and pitfalls of this thing that we human beings believe we have: free will and freedom to choose. One of the most successful books about Unitarian Universalism was a little book called Our Chosen Faith. And it was intended as a book for seekers who were looking for a religious alternative to their inherited faith. Ours is a faith that stresses personal freedom. You are not handed a dogmatic catechism to memorize to make you part of the club. Instead, you are asked to do something much more difficult: to examine your beliefs, to hone them in the fire of thought, to have them challenged in community with others, and to make intelligent and heartful choices drawn from a variety of sources, and including your own life experiences. So the second part of our name, universalism, was founded on a rejection of the belief of predestination, rejecting the belief that we don't have choice. So I'm going to go into a little theological excursion here for a minute. Calvinism, the father of modern-day Presbyterianism, believed that God had already decided who would be saved and who would be condemned to hell before the world was created. So Calvinists believe that God has chosen a limited number of souls to save at the beginning of time, and basically nothing a person can do during their life can change their eternal fate. Our Universalist ancestors rejected that idea, that we had no agency about our own fate, the state of our souls. So this is what's called theological determinism. But this fall, I came across a review of a book whose premise utterly flummoxed me. And this did not come from a theologian. This came from a neurobiologist. The book is by a Stanford neurobiologist named Robert Spolsky. And the book is called Determined: A Science of Life Without Free Will. And Spolsky's thesis is that he thinks the time has come to accept the truth about determinism and acknowledge that human beings have no free will at all. And because we have no free will, he continues to argue, he would say that no one is either blameworthy or praiseworthy, for that matter, for doing anything. This is a very complicated book and complicated argument, so I'm going to try and sort of break it down here. So if theological determinism is based on God making decisions about human activity, then what is scientific determinism, which is what Spolsky's book is about? Well, Spolsky draws on explanations at every level, from atoms to culture, to make the case that everything we think and do is caused by something other than free will. We can't control, say, the conditions of the first crucial 9 months of our existence. So here's something he wrote about that. He said, lots of glucocorticoids from mom marinating your fetal brain thanks to maternal stress, and there's increased vulnerability to depression and anxiety in your adulthood. To which I thought, oh dear, one more reason to blame moms. Ugh. But you thought, he says, your failing marriage was to blame for your depression. But it turns out it was all bound to happen long ago. It isn't so much that our blame was aimed in the wrong direction as it is that blame, in the strict sense, this is still Spolsky talking, never truly made sense. So if everything is determined, if we have no freedom of choice, then there's nobody to blame for what happens? So now that's me talking. There are two problems I see with this idea. First, as human beings, we love having choices. When I visit my grandkids, they are constantly being asked, do you want to wear this outfit or this one? Do you want peas or broccoli? And it seemed to me that having to make decisions all day long would be overwhelming for a 3-year-old. But as it turns out, this is a psychological tool in helping children not only learn about what they need or want, but to give them agency over their own lives, over their own decisions. So when I attempt to put on the blue socks instead of the red ones that they chose, a battle ensues. Because a 3-year-old, like a 30-year-old, like a 93-year-old, wants to believe that we have control over our lives. We don't want to believe that some supernatural being or the strict dictums of neurobiology can dictate our choices. We want the freedom to choose our own way. That phrase is a quote by Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning. And in that book, he describes what it was like to live in a Nazi concentration camp, a place where all freedom of choice was taken from him. Frankl observes this, quote, "The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And there were always choices to make. Every day, every hour offered the opportunity to make a decision which determined whether you would or would not submit to those powers which threaten to rob you of your very self, your inner freedom, which determined whether or not you became a plaything to circumstance, renouncing freedom and dignity." End quote. So Frankl's point here is that there are some circumstances you cannot choose. He did not choose to be in a concentration camp. Yet Frankl insisted that in each circumstance he could determine not his fate, but his attitude, his spiritual comportment, if you will, for how he would orient himself in the face of such disaster. I think that is in part why I chose the song that you heard earlier. I don't want to know about evil. I only want to know about love. Because when I first heard that song, it seemed so earnestly hopeful, so 1960s. Change the channel when it comes to bad news. The barking, corrupt politicians, the sufferings in Palestine and Israel and Haiti, the terrors inflicted upon LGBTQAI and BIPOC loved ones on a daily basis, the lies propounded by politicians. I don't want to know about evil. I want to choose to know about love. It reminds me of Kristen Wyman's daughter this morning when she says, "Daddy, I can't sleep. I close my eyes. I see terrible things." Oh, I know it, child. Don't we all? Isn't there anyone among us who hasn't wakened at 3 a.m. and thoughts of terrible things that have happened or could happen? Because we know if it's not one thing, it's another, right? It's always going to be something. And he told her to hold in her mind all the good things that she loves. Don't think about evil, honey. Just think about the things that you love. Pray about it. And, of course, you heard her response. I asked God to turn me into a unicorn, and look how that worked out. Be careful what you pray for. So I would say that in this case, God made the right mistake by not answering her prayer and turning a little girl into a unicorn. Our human freedom of choice, our ability to choose our way, also means accepting the consequences of that choice. So we can argue with theologians and philosophers about whether or not we are all products of choice or our every decision is predetermined. But what we can't argue about is that for better or worse, we all live with the choices that have determined our lives, that have shaped our lives, choices either we or someone else has made. Okay, so it's time for a quick recap about what we've learned of Western traditions, that most of us know best view the question of whether we really make choices. The original Christian Catholic position has been an all-powerful God that knows and sees all past and future, has created us with a gift, the gift of free will, which works up to a point and makes us responsible for our sins. And then Reformation Protestants like John Calvin said that everything we do is predestined. It doesn't matter how good we are, because some are from the beginning of time and forever in God's graces, others not. Don't like that one. Sounds like a spiritual caste system to me. But then, on the philosophy side, we have the determinists of different schools, including the scientific determinism of Spolsky, who makes the argument that everything is determined biologically, from atoms to culture. And we don't accept that, because Spolsky says we're skilled at concocting stories in which we're in charge. And so, what's another response to this? Do you ever hear that phrase, well, everything happens for a reason? Yeah, we just don't know what the reason is. Well, for many theists, it's God's reason, and that's a mystery and not for us to quibble with, and the conversation stops. But within our Western religious and philosophical traditions, we've come to an important humanist position that is popular among many of us, that we are both individually and collectively makers in this world. We determine the values that we honor. We agree on how we will articulate them and enforce them and seek to educate generations to be good, moral decision makers. The summary of the Western tradition, however, is not the only game in town. The Asian religious and philosophical traditions have very different ways of addressing cause and effect, determinism and free will. And that began thousands of years ago with Hinduism, that was transmitted through Buddhism, and these days is understood and practiced widely in the West. And I have to give a shout out now to my colleague, one of the ministers of Unity Church, K.P. Hong, who's deeply grounded in Buddhist philosophy and practice. And I want to thank him for reflections on what comes next in this sermon. Asian religious traditions, and particularly Buddhism, propose that we consider our universe as existing in an infinite and interdependent network of cause and effect. So in popular American culture, we've become familiar with one of the words used to explain this deep philosophical tradition and teaching: karma. Now, I suspect some of you have seen that bumper sticker from years ago, "My karma ran over your dogma." It's a cute meme, but it does point us towards a different way of looking at choice than the ones that we discussed in the West. Karma as we talk about it popularly, is the consequence of your past choices and actions, but that's only partially right. Sometimes we use the metaphor of fruit to describe the consequences of our actions, as in the phrase, the fruit of our labors. But hang with me for a minute. Consider a ripening mango. And ask yourself about all that went into that almost ripe mango that you bought at Mississippi Market, being ready for tomorrow's fruit salad. If we were to break that down into all the causes that made the mango possible, we would have a very long and incomplete list. Karma is not just the consequences of your immediate present actions, such as planting or watering a mango, but in a very important real sense, everyone's actions throughout space and time that has led to this ripe mango moment. You are never going to look at a mango in the same way now, right? Karma. So karma also arises because of what each of us does next, and includes both the action, here's the other part, and the intent behind the action. And in that choice we make as to what we will do next, in the intent of that action, is we create new karma. New karma is a creative act. But here's the important part. It's not conditioned. It is conditioned, but it's not predetermined. So not only is it not predetermined by what happened before, it is opportunistic. We can freely make new karma with the actions of our lives as a gift or as a curse to the world. The Buddha offered a teaching to his son, Rahula, about developing three qualities in his action: wisdom, compassion, and purity, which means checking the actual results of actions and learning from mistakes so as not to be fooled by an intention that seems wise and compassionate but really isn't. So if I interpret this complex Eastern philosophy correctly, karma is both persistent in its consequences, but can be unraveled. We ourselves, through our moral and ethical choices, have the power and moral responsibility to make choices that lessen the suffering in our lives and in the larger world. But this happens most effectively if we recognize the interdependence of all of our lives. And as Reverend KP noted when he read the draft of this sermon, it is not individual moral agency that should be our focus, but relational moral agency. Three big words: relational moral agency. Sounds complicated, but let me offer a translation. They mean church. Church. Relational moral agency is what we do in church. So how do we know? How do we know what the right choice is? We know because we are not alone in making our choices. We are backed up by a wisdom tradition represented by this church and by the people who make up this community. Sure, every choice we make can carry with it an unexpected consequence and the possibility of failure, harm, or mistake. So, go with me back again to Robbie Robertson's song. And I think about how being part of a church has shaped and changed me when I hear those words. Gotta change some old habits, trying to turn a new leaf. I gotta stop chasing rabbits, but I got hooked beyond belief. Let it go, they told me, but I just couldn't hear their plea. Let it go, they warned me, because I'm just trying to make the right mistake. Unitarian Universalism hasn't captured all the best wisdom in this world, but it's my chosen faith. My chosen faith. Here I stand. And if I try and live a principled life in an unprincipled world, and if that makes me silly, then let me make the right mistake. And if turning the other cheek and forgiving someone makes me a bleeding heart, then let me make that right mistake. And if laughing too loud or loving too much makes me a fool for love, then I'm going to make that right mistake. Because life will bring us So many challenges, so many choices. Because as you all know, you going to say it with me? If it's not one thing, it's another. It's always something. Right? So would you rather offer your brutality or your blessing? Would you rather make someone miserable or make someone's day? Even if the scientific determinists are right and we really have no free will and everything is determined in advance, the grand script has already been written, I'd still rather live a script where I choose over and over again to love without conditions and to try to live a life of integrity and service and joy, to practice hope instead of indulging in despair, and to remember and be inspired by the words that you heard in our responsive reading by Adrienne Marie Brown, who wrote, "With our brief and epic lives, every day we are given the option of love." May it be true for you today and all days.
Unity Church is framed by statements of conscience, known as its end statements. One of those is generously give and openly receive compassionate care in times of sorrow, joy, and transition. Our compassionate care extends beyond the walls of this church to communities with whom we share a common interest. Each week, the larger portion of our offering goes to our community partners. And this week, it's Planting People, Growing Justice. Planting People, Growing Justice has helped thousands of students discover their potential by planting seeds of social change through education programs targeting the statistic that 1 in 4 children in the U.S. has not learned how to read by grade 4. This collection will support their youth education programming, which provides learning labs at local schools. Will the ushers now please come forward? May the work of our hands and the generosity of our hearts be given in gratitude this day. Let the offering now be taken.
Well, if you want to sing out, sing out. And if you want to be free, be free. 'Cause there's a million ways to be, you know that there are. And if you want to live high, live high. And if you want to live low, live low. 'Cause there's a million ways to go, you know that there are. You can do what you want. The opportunity's on. And if you find a new way, you can do it today. You can make it all true. And you can make it undo, you see. Ah, it's easy. Ah, you only need to know. And if you want to say yes, say yes. And if you want to say no, say no. 'Cause there's a million ways to go, you know that there are. And if you want to be me, be me. And if you want to be you, be you. 'Cause there's a million things to do, you know that there are. You can do what you the opportunity's on. If you find a new way, you can do it today. You can make it all true, and you can make it undo. You see, it's easy. You only need to know. And if you want to sing out, sing out. And if you want to be free, be free. 'Cause there's a million things to be. You know that there are, you know that there are, you know that there are, you know that there are. You know that there are, you know that there are.
Speaking of singing, oh wait. Speaking of singing out, Spirit says do, 1024. Do, sing, shout. Spirit says, sing, laugh, shout. It's your choice. You get to choose. Choose wisely and well, as it says in the Hebrew scriptures. I've set before you a choice: life, death, blessing, curses. Therefore, choose life, that you and your descendants may live. May your choice be a blessing to yourself and to others this day. Go in peace. Amen. Oh, and I've started a new tradition, which I just already forgot. It's in your order of service. Please say with me as R.A. Giles extinguishes our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with our hearts until we are together again. May it be so. Thank you.